In this lesson, we're going to be looking at how we can find the highest common factor and the lowest common multiple. To do this, we're going to have to be able to find factors. And so remember, factors are values that multiply to get the number. So if I'm looking for factors of 28, I'm looking for things that multiply to get 28. And the first one I should always write down is 1 and the number itself, because 1 times 28 is 28. And then what I do is I'm going to count upwards. So I started at 1, now I'm going to count upwards, seeing if the number goes into 28. So does 2 go into 28? Yes, it does, and I know that because 28 is an even number. And in order to find out what this one should be, I just have to halve 28. So whenever you're putting 2 into it, then you've just got to halve the number to find its pair. So 2 times 14 would get me 28. Does 3 go into 28? Let's just check our times tables. No, it doesn't. It goes 27, then 30 on the 3 times tables. So no 3. Does 4 go into it? Yes, it does. 4 times 7 is on the times tables. And so there's 2 more factors there. Does 5 go into it? 5's are 25, 5 6's are 30, so no, 5 does not go into 28. And I'm not even going to try 6 because that's more than halfway towards 7 from 4. So if I did try 6, it wouldn't work. Check your times tables. It's 28's not going to be on there. But you don't even need to worry about trying it because there's only 2 numbers between 4 and 7. And that's 5 and 6, and so you do 5, but you don't need to do 6 because that's more than halfway between 4 and 7. So that means that's it. That's all of my factors there. Using that method, you make sure you don't miss any. Now, multiples are much easier because you just multiply your number by 1, then 2, then 3, etc. Really, you're just going up the times table. So if we're looking for multiples of 7, the first one is 7 because that's 1 times 7. And the second one's going to be 14 because that's 2 times 7. And then we've got 3 times 7, which is 21, 4 times 7, which is 28, and etc. etc. You can go as far as you want to as multiples. You'll never run out of finding multiples. Right, now let's have a look at the highest common factor. That's the highest factor that's shared by all the numbers. Now, you normally only be looking at 2 or 3 numbers, such as this one here. See how here we're looking at the highest common factor for 4 and 6. So I've got to start by listing the factors of 4. So I've written down 1 and 4. They're always the first 2. 1 and the number itself. And then does 2 go into 4? Yes, 2 times 2 is 4. And 3 doesn't go into 4, so I've now found all my factors of 4. I'm looking for my factors of 6 now, so there's 1 and 6 listed. So going up, does 2 go into 6? Yes, 2 times 3 is 6, and I can stop looking now because remember, if 2 times 3 is 6, and then the next number would be 3, well, I've already got 3 there, and you can stop once you get a number that you've already got there. And so what's the highest factor that is on both of those lists? Now, this is the highest factor altogether, 6, but 6 isn't on this list here. So the highest factor that's on both lists is 2. And so we can say the highest common factor of 4 and 6 is 2. So just list our factors, look for the highest one on both lists. Now, the lowest common multiple means the lowest multiple that's shared by all numbers. So you've got highest factors, lowest multiples. So if we look for the lowest multiple this time, lowest common multiple of 4 and 6, then we need to start by listing the multiples of 4. And so there we go, I've just listed them straight out. Remember, going up my 4 times tables. And I stopped at 20. You can keep going as far as you want to, of course, but I find 5's a nice number to list for the first one because really all we're looking for is one that is also on the multiples of 6 list. So let's list that now. Here's the multiples of 6. Notice I only listed 2 here. That's because I went 6, 12, and I realized then, oh, 12's on the other list. I'm just looking for the first number that's on both lists. And so I don't need to list more than 12. I can keep going if I want to, but there's no point because I've already found it. 12 is the first one, the lowest one that is shared on both lists. And so I can say the lowest common multiple of 4 and 6 is 12. Now, there is another way to find the lowest common multiple, and that is done by if you multiply the numbers together and then you divide by the highest common factor. So this is if you know the highest common factor. So let's test it out. We know the lowest common multiple of 4 and 6 was 12. Let's see if we get 12 using this method. So we also found out the highest common factor was 2. And we did that before. And so this method says if I multiply 4 and 6 together and then divide by 2, I'll get the lowest common multiple. And so let's give it a try. 4 times 6 is there, and divide by 2. Now when you're working this out, you can actually do the division first. Remember, normally you just go left to right when there's only multiplications and divisions, but in this case it's actually going to be easy to do the division first. This number will always be easily divided by that number, and that means you'll have a lower number to times by. So if you go 4 times 6, that's 24, then divided by 2, that's not too bad. But imagine if you had like 9 times 7 there or something first, and then you had to do a division. It gets a bit harder. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, and so we put that down and we leave the 4 times, and then 4 times 3 is 12. And so once again we've got our lowest common multiple of 12, which is what we're expecting, because that's what we just worked out before, that the lowest common multiple of 4 and 6 is. So that method also works. Sometimes you'll be asked to use this method up here. Okay, just 2 more quick points. The lowest common factor of any 2 numbers is always 1. That's because 1 is always a factor of every single number. So we never bother finding the lowest common factor. It's 1. It's always highest common factor. And the highest common multiple is infinity. See, multiples go on forever. And so really you can't find the highest common multiple because there's always higher ones. No matter what number you find, there's always higher ones you can write down. And so we don't bother with lowest common factor or highest common multiple. It's always highest common factor and lowest common multiple. So let's see some examples. Here we're going to find the highest common factor of 3 numbers. And so we just start in any order. It doesn't really matter which one you write down first. I'm going to start with the 20 just because it's there first. The factors of 20. These are the factors of 20. I just use the normal method that I use to find all the factors. And then I'll write down the factors of 24. And then I'll write down the factors of 8. And so I've listed all the factors of all the numbers, and I've just got to look for the highest one that is on all 3, and that is the number 4. Now, it doesn't matter if you could just do that in your head, you still list all 3. All the factors of all 3, and then you can just say the highest common factor is 4. You don't really need to put a box around it necessarily, I suppose. You can just write underneath the highest common factor is 4, but you should show that they're all on your list, so circling them or underlining them is always a good idea. Now the next one, we're going to find the lowest common multiple of 3 numbers, and so I can do them in any order I want to here. I generally start with the highest number first, and so I'll list the multiples of 8, and I'm just going to go up to about 5, and then I'm going to do the multiples of 6. Now notice I stopped at 24 here. That's because I noticed there's a 24 on that list there. Now this may not always work. Sometimes you'll get to the 3rd list and 24 wouldn't be on it. That's okay. If you need to add more multiples, you just go back and add more multiples. You can add as many as you need to until you find the lowest common one. But I like to avoid having to write down more numbers than I need to. And so I pick the biggest number and I write down the first 5 multiples. And then when I get to a common one there, I stop and then I list my 3rd ones, and I only go up to that common one again, so that 24 there. And like I said, if 24 wasn't there, I'd just have to keep going, and I could put some more multiples here and some more multiples there if I needed to. But I have actually found the one that's common on all the lists. If you wanted to, you could list the first 20 multiples of each one. You'd just be wasting a lot of time there, a lot of the time, because everything after the 3rd one here wasn't needed, and everything after the 4th one wasn't needed. And so there's my lowest common multiple, 24. And let's look for the highest common factor of 12 and 8. And then we're going to use it to help find the lowest common multiple. So it's telling us how we have to find it here. So we're going to find the highest common factor of 12 and 8 to start with. So list all our factors of 12 and all our factors of 8. And then using the usual method, what's the highest one on both lists? It's 4. And so we need to then use that highest common factor. We're going to go 8 times by 12. So 12 times 8. And then we're going to divide it by 4, that highest common factor. And so 12 times 8 divided by 4. Work out the 8 divided by 4 first. That's 2. So we're left with 12 times 2. And then 12 times 2 is 24. And so that's the lowest common multiple of 12 and 8. And you'd get the same answer if you listed the multiples of 12 and you listed the multiples of 8. Now, in reality, listing the multiples is actually usually quicker. So you don't normally use this method. But the book's going to give you some questions that ask you to use that method in particular, and it's a good little trick to know just in case, and so we're just going to practice it a little bit. So let's give it a go with some practice questions. Remember to pause the video. And there's the solutions for these ones with the working that you need to be showing. In the first one, I had to find the lowest common multiple of the three numbers, so I just listed the multiples of them. I just used my times tables. I actually went a bit further than I needed to here, so it didn't matter if you didn't write 16 and 20. I could have stopped at 12, but for some reason I kept going there. I definitely stopped at 12 here though, because I realized that was now the one that was on all the lists, and I just wrote it down. My lowest common multiple of those three numbers is 12. And then in the second one, I had to start by finding the highest common factor of 9 and 6. So here's the factors of 9, there's the factors of 6, and then 3 was on both lists, and so I made note of that. And then I had to multiply 9 and 6 together, because remember, you multiply the numbers, then divide by the highest common factor. So multiplied 9 and 6 together and divided by the highest common factor. I did the division first because that's easier. So 6 divided by 3 was 2, and then 9 times 2 is 18. And so that's my lowest common multiple of 9 and 6. Here's a couple more practice questions if you need to have another go. Remember to pause the video. And there's our solutions to those ones. And that is the end of this lesson.